So let's talk a little bit about cognitive dissonance. It's a term that you hear a lot, and it describes a state of confusion where you have somebody that sort of has a split experience with reference to a certain circumstance. In this state, there will be somebody that has the ability to understand and intellectualize like what's happening, and then the other side, they have an emotional experience that will differ. And so it creates sort of like a state of confusion where they'll experience love in a relationship, but then they'll know there's some real big problems here. They may feel like something is their fault, but then they'll know that, wait a second, they're doing something that they shouldn't do. And so those two different occurrences of reality, one being primarily intellectual, the other being predominantly emotional, may not be in alignment. But how does somebody get there, and why would they be there? Well, let's take a look at the example of a people pleaser. You see, how do people pleasers commonly describe themselves? They'll say things like, I'm understanding. I see the good in people. They'll also say things like, it makes me happy to make other people happy. Now let's take a look at all of those and see how those all fit into cognitive dissonance. You see, first, let's take a look at I see the good in people. That right there may sound like a very admirable trait, but that is not what it is at all. Seeing the good in people is essentially idealization. That means that they will examine somebody and they will create an interpretation of that person. Well, they will see the good in them and they will stand for the good in them, often even wanting the other person to experience that good in them too. There are even instances where somebody will tell you they're a bad person. And the people pleaser will be like, no, I see the good in people. They stand for, beckon for, call for the good in others. But why would they do that? Seeing the good in others is what people-pleasing people did as children. That it is a direct response to abuse. For the child, in order to survive their parents, they had to idealize these people. Seeing the good in those abusive parents made the childhood livable. Rather than being in constant fear, you would want to see them when they're happy. That the parents could be very emotionally unstable. There can be periods where they seem happy, and for that person, that's when they get love. That's when they get attention and affection. That's when they exist. That's when they matter. But then the other side, the dark side, that's scary. That's abusive. That is where all the negativity comes from. That's where the disconnection is experienced. That's where we feel not good enough. And so what the people pleaser does is elects to relate to that person as the good. And they don't want to relinquish that view. In order to maintain that view, people pleasers devalue themselves. What does that mean? That means that they will assume responsibility for the emotional states of other people. That when that person starts acting up, the people pleaser will think it's their fault. They'll feel guilt. They'll feel not good enough. And they do that to establish the illusion of control, meaning that I can fix myself, I can improve myself, and that would make that person happy. So that person is being mean, but they're doing it for a reason. It might be my fault. And so I can do something about myself. And so people pleasers, to maintain that idealization, I see the good in that other person isn't at fault in this situation. It could be me, or at least at part. And so that is seeing the good in other people, a potential disaster. Now let's take a look at the next one. I'm understanding. Now, in an environment where there's abuse, sometimes it's just bad. But what do? We try to understand it. Have you ever heard a people pleaser or somebody say, but he was traumatized? But this, but that. You see, being understanding means that You see reality. Something's bad, something's going on. And what you do is rather than just see it as it is, you will try to understand it, figure it out, solve this problem. Why is that happening? Why are they doing that? And you become open to a conversation to figure it out. People pleasers very regularly want to understand, often confused. And so what do? Is they want to talk. Why did you cheat on me? What did I do wrong? You see, they open up the opportunity to take what they saw that wasn't good and transform it into something that they can manage, deal with, or fix, so they can preserve that idealization. That there might be something else to explain why this person did that. They're not bad. No, he's not bad. He's not a bad guy. He was traumatized. He was cheated on before. His parents hurt him. He's got a mother wound. So we can work on that mother wound. You know what? I'm going to see what I can do to make it better for him. So when you think about being understanding as a people pleaser, what you're saying is that you are accepting of anything, because you will go to work on trying to recreate it, alter the way you experience it. That reality is too painful. And so understanding is a way to avoid the trauma of it, to make it less bad, to make them less bad, to even come up with an explanation that might even make me at fault again, so that I can remain attached to that idealization. And so being understanding is also something that creates confusion, because often you'll entertain stories and lies and things, and you want to believe it. You see, the people pleaser wants to believe what they want to believe because they are attached to the image of this person, and the way that person may have behaved at the beginning of the relationship felt good. So they're very attached to how that person made them feel. And so they don't want to give up on that. And so the people pleaser has vested interest in that ideal version of these people, including their parents, because that gives them hope. It gives them the possibility of being in control of this environment. Because if I can fix myself, if I can figure out what's wrong, if I can understand this situation, I can go to work at doing something about it. I can be responsible for making it better. Now let's take a look at the last one. I like making people happy. It makes me happy to make people happy. Well, people pleasers existed in an environment that wasn't safe. Their hypervigilance makes them very, very perceptive to the emotional states of people around them. Because if their parents as children were angry, that wasn't good. They would want them to be happy. They need them to be happy in order for me to be happy. Because if those parents were angry or mad, that would be a bad day. And so people pleasers will, in their mind, take on the responsibility of the emotional welfare of other people, because that gives them security, peace. It makes them feel lovable or safe. And so people pleasers will then recognize that they get some reward for themselves. They get some happiness out of the happiness of others through observation, that they could not be happy at home when everyone else was upset, because they would be getting devalued, abused. And so how do these all work in cognitive dissonance? Well, here you are. You've idealized somebody that's less than ideal. You've listened to this person's traumas and stuff, and you've chosen to accept them in your life. And now when they start acting up, you want to understand it and explain it and create an alternate reality that obscures true reality. You even will explain it as like, I did something wrong, to preserve that idealization. And then you'll take on the responsibility of trying to make them happy so you can feel happy. And as you do all of that, and that behavior continues to deteriorate, and you keep adding to it, such grows the divide between the fantasy you're living in and the reality you're actively avoiding by trying to understand and fix and mitigate and change reality. That's cognitive dissonance.